What you see here right behind me is a General 162 woodworking lathe, a tool that I definitely don't need, and yet I could not resist when this came up for sale on Facebook Marketplace. I have no idea in what year this machine has been manufactured, but one thing is for sure, it is pretty old. It has been used in a woodworking shop of a local college. Then it went through a couple private woodworking shops before the previous owner decided to sell it online. Why buying a tool that I don't really need, especially if there are tools on the wish list that would be by far more practical and usable, like a bandsaw or a jointer? Well, simply for the joy of it. I always wanted to get into woodturning on some point, and besides that, I'm a sucker for tools that are built like a tank. I mean, if you think about it, this tool survived God knows how many years of teenager abuse, probably one of the most brutal forces on planet Earth, and it's still standing. Now, theoretically, this is usable as it is, but there are a couple things that I would like to change and that need a little bit of attention. So let's do a quick walk around and get into a bit more details. First, I'm not a big fan of this dark blue color. I know tastes are different, but for my personal taste, pretty much any color would have been better than this. Besides that, you can see we have paint chips all over the place. So it's a bit in a rough shape here. Like, this is no dirt, those are all paint chips. So definitely something I would like to address. It's not the original paint job either. The original color is actually this. This is quite pleasant to me. But anyways, I don't want to spend too much money on this, so I will have to see what paint and color I have already in house. Now, this lathe came in two different versions, the 161 and the 162. The 161 has 4 speed settings, and the 162, which is this one, has a variable speed drive. So what that means is you can adjust the RPM between 500 and 3000 by turning this wheel here when the machine is running. That gives you a lot more flexibility when it comes to the speed setting. So this version is a little bit more desirable. Now, one interesting detail is this uneven gap here between the lathe and the cabinet itself. I hope you can see this on camera. Now, first, the previous owner and myself thought that someone must have put a washer in between here in the attempt to adjust this cabinet to their uneven floor. But it turns out that's not the case. It's actually part of the cast iron section here. And I also put a long level between the 3 feet, and they're perfectly level with each other, as well as the surface here. So I have to assume that the factory just didn't want to spend the money on machining another surface, especially since this doesn't really affect the function of the lathe. I guess at this point it's also worth mentioning that from what I understand, this tool is definitely not a high-end tool, but it is supposed to be a workhorse and very long-lasting, so I guess it makes sense that they use them a lot in colleges. Now at the back here we have this electric box, and I'm not sure if that's an original part because I couldn't find anything about it online, nor is anything about it in the manual that I downloaded. Also just noticing all those holes here. But it seems to be some sort of emergency shut-off switch. It's not wired up, but I will keep it anyways because I don't want to have a big hole in here. Over here we have a plate with a couple specs. So originally there was a 220 volt, 3-phase, 3/4 horsepower motor in this. But the previous owner replaced this with a 110 volt single-phase 3/4 horsepower motor. So I won't have any trouble with that anytime soon, hopefully. Also, I don't even have a 220 volt plug in the garage here, so I'm glad he did that. Now, of course, with such an old tool, as more as you look around, there's more signs of wear and tear you will find, like the bent steel down here, like this loose makeshift handle that doesn't really work properly. That handle up here doesn't look original, but I really like that one actually because it's super solid. I'm gonna keep that. I noticed on the tailstock, this bolt is not original. It's supposed to lock the quill in place. Still works, but it's not an original part. So yeah, I'm sure if I keep looking I will find more. The core of the tool though is rock solid. The motor is pretty much brand new. The bearings are good. So I think I'm just gonna start by trying to take this apart as much as I can to make the paint job easier, fix a couple things along the way, and then just go from there. I just finished cleaning up the tailstock, and as you can see, we have a big opening at the back. It's going to be nearly impossible to clean up the old paint in here, and it's also going to be very hard to repaint this with a brush. So I think what I'm going to try to do is to just cover this up. This also will keep shavings and dirt out of there. And maybe I use 3 holes here, tap and die them, and use a couple small bolts to keep the plate in place. And for the plate itself, I think I'm just going to try to use this piece of scrap steel, and this is going to be my template. So let's see how that goes. You might wonder at this point why I'm going through all the hustle here after all the tool would have worked the way it was. And yet again, it is for the joy of it. I really like those kind of restoration projects. I find it super satisfying to improve a tool not only visually but also functionally. And if you take care of them, they can literally last for generations. So spending all the time and effort to dress them up is a small price to pay, in my books anyways. Now besides that, if I ever have to sell this for whatever reason, by restoring it, I also increase the value, so there's that too. We got 3 different colors going on. We have the dark blue on the outside here, the baby blue on the inside, and the original green on the inner box. And the whole thing is empty, nothing is wired up. By the looks of it, this was meant for the 3-phase motor anyway, so I think I'm just going to change my mind, scrap this entire box here. I still have to cover this, so I think I'm just going to use a piece of scrap steel like that. That will also cover the ugly holes here and the rough edge. And it will save me 3 inch of profile, because this box was sticking out 3 inch at the back. This might become relevant when I want to place the tool here in the shop against the wall or something. I'm not sure about that yet, but yeah, I think I'm just gonna do that. I only had glossy black in the house, and that's not the color I wanted. The problem with black is you will see every single dust particle on it, which I learned the hard way. Now I could have tried to get a color match to copy the original green, but I went a cheaper and easier route by just buying a stock color. It looks white, but it's actually light gray. It's timeless, in my opinion, a little bit more classy than a green, and most importantly, it's very forgiving when it comes to dust. Now this lathe is meant to be bolted down to the floor. Despite its heavy weight of 340 pounds, you could experience vibrations if you don't do that. Now I'm not quite ready to commit to a permanent position in the shop, nor do I want to damage the concrete slab. So I think I'm going to try to go for a compromise here. My thought is to create a super thick, solid wooden slab, bolt the lathe right to that. That should tie all 6 anchor points together. It will add a lot of mass, and it will raise the lathe by 3 to 4 inch and bring it up to a more comfortable work height for me. So I'm hoping to hit 2 birds with 1 stone here. The lathe actually came with a whole bunch of basic accessories, and I'm sure I will add more in the future. All of this stuff will need a place to live. Now underneath the lathe here we have this useless empty space. I think that would be a great spot to add a little wooden cabinet. And again, adding more mass will help battle vibrations. Man, we have a lot of woodwork to do, so let's get to work. Now that was terrible timing for a power out, but I was one step away from the whole varnishing process and I was gonna spare you from that anyway. So for now, let's just call it good on the woodworking end and let's move on to the next step. While I was painting the headstock here, I noticed those two holes, and it turns out they're meant for an index pin, which is missing on this machine. And you have 60 holes here in that pulley, and with the index pin you can lock the pulley in position, which then allows you to cut a flute or grooves in your workpiece. I'm not sure if I ever will use this. This is definitely something for the advanced wood turner, but I would like to have the options. So I found this steel rod here in my scrap pile, and after removing some paint, it fits perfectly in here. So let's see if I can make this work somehow and turn this into an index pin. With my first attempt, I tried to reduce the tip down to the needed diameter with the help of a drill press and an angle grinder, which did not work at all. I ended up being completely off-center. I tried the same method again, but this time with a file. That was much better. It took longer, but it felt like I had much more control with a file. Alright, so it does work now. I can use the pin to lock the pulley in place and there's zero movement in it, so that's good. But if I back up the rod a little bit and start rotating it, I can see that the tip is still not 100% perfectly in center. I'm not sure if you can see this on camera, but I still can make this work, because if I drill a hole in here now and use part of a bolt to lock the pin itself in position, that will prevent two movements, the back and forward movement, but also rotational movement. And therefore, if I move on to the next hole, the distance between the holes will always be exactly the same, and that's really what matters. Now, because the bolt here in the tailstock is not an original part, as of right now you have to use a wrench to lock the quill in place. I don't really like that, so I think I'm just gonna weld this rod in place as a lever. That comes closer to the original part anyways. Much better. Alright, time to assemble everything. Right away I realized that I cut the wooden slab half an inch too short. I don't know how this happened, but I fixed it by cutting two pieces of half an inch rubber. That extended it just enough, and it also added a protective layer to the end grain. When I loaded the lathe on and off my truck bed, I had to stand it up on its end. I guess that's where some of the paint damage came from. Now with the rubber on the end, I have a perfect surface to do this job again without damaging anything, so I guess I got lucky here and turned my mistake into an unintentional improvement. Now I wish I could say that this was my first try, but that would be a lie. My first attempt off camera looks like this. It blew up on me. The bowl gouge got caught. Pretty scary stuff, but after changing my pants and watching a couple YouTube videos, I tried again successfully. I have to say though, I totally underestimated how much there is to learn about the whole wood turning topic. There's just so much more to it than I thought, but I'm looking forward to learning to improve my skills. Now this tool will add a ton of options to my woodworking overall, and believe it or not, it's kind of relaxing and satisfying. It's really hard to explain, but I think I got hooked. Anyways, I guess it's time to wrap this up at this point. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next one.